Faces. Faces prove reality is uncanny, and they usually tell us a lot. They hold many meanings, and some would even say they are sacred. Someone's face is so key to how we understand them as a person. In fact, a face is so tied to how we understand personhood overall that not seeing someone's face makes us so much more willing to insult them and abuse them. Faces have been proven to be uncanny by media, religion, philosophy, and science. But nonetheless, we continue to surround ourselves with faces. This proclivity to surround ourselves with faces, which are so fundamentally uncanny on one hand, proves that there is a deeper reality to them on the other hand. When we see a face, we aren't just seeing an awkward amalgamation of component parts, we see beauty, we see life, we see form, we see, to be frank, personhood. But what about animals? Surely you can't be suggesting that animals are persons. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing worth mentioning is how quickly we personify animals, and even vegetables, in fiction and fantasy, especially in children's fiction and fantasy. As though deer and cows weren't things we hunted and killed for food, but lived with and related to. The hair of a broccoli or asparagus simply makes sense enough aesthetically speaking to be left on for hair, while the baby carrot gets human hair copy-pasted. Some might argue that, well, we personify non-animal, non-living objects too all the time. This says more about the human tendency to personify than it does about the intrinsic personness of faces. But this proves my point as well. What does it take for us to start imagining a Crayola marker as a wacky character? Literally just two eyes, a mouth, and some sort of stylish decor. With the movie Cars, all it takes for us to personify them successfully is give them eyes and a mouth. Therefore, rooted in the earliest attempts of biology, the most microscopic attempts is an attempt at personhood. From the very start, identity and the divine are things life is trying to understand and see, and formulate. From the most primordial instance, life longs to know God. But only in humanity has it begun to see enough of this glimpse to be understood not as animal, not as filth and dust, from the dust God rose Adam after all, but as a dual creature in a state of life between heaven and hell, not angel, not demon, but human. The armchair Paleolithic philosophy talk of animal nature versus divine nature, the one that will win is the one that you feed, speaks to this tug of war between degenerate microscopic plurality and a fundamentally unobtainable singularity, one modeled after a separate but perfect beauty. We live a life of scale, and each scale includes faces. What if, just as there are some wacky floaters that are physically microscopic that exist on smaller three-dimensional scales relative to us, we too are wacky floaters that are spiritually microscopic existing on smaller 4 or 5-dimensional scales relative to God or even angels? We don't even have to concede an ultimate person to be as plausible as he really is to concede that such an ultimate person probably exists. We merely need to concede that an ultimate face is plausible. If there is a bigger, transcendent face of a higher scale than ours, just as ours is of a higher scale than the microscopic buddies, then we can thereby assume the person behind that face is also transcendent. Some might say positing God and God's face is just personifying the unknown in a God of the Gaps fashion, but given just how many lower life forms have faces, and given how the face is so intimately tied to our conception of personhood, how can we be so sure?